Have you ever felt your own home turn against you? That quiet, crawling moment when your heart whispers something is wrong, but your mind refuses to believe it. That's exactly how it started for me. It was supposed to be an ordinary night. I had just turned off the old lamp beside my bed, the one that flickers twice before dying, and the house felt unusually quiet. Too quiet. You know that heavy kind of silence where even the walls seem to be holding their breath? Yeah, that one. I remember the faint smell first, not strong, not enough to panic, just a whisper of smoke like someone had burned toast downstairs. I chuckled, must be those damn neighbors again with their midnight cooking. But when I tried to roll over, my chest tightened. My heart started beating faster than it had in years. Something about that smell wasn't right. It wasn't kitchen smoke, it was older, heavier, bitter. I sat up, rubbed my knees, and shuffled toward the door, muttering to myself like old folks do when we're alone, "Come on, Margaret, it's nothing." Just check. The handle felt cold under my palm. I turned it slowly. Nothing. I frowned, turned harder, still nothing. "Oh, come on now, don't play stubborn on me," I whispered. The hinges groaned a little, but the door didn't move. Not even an inch. I pushed with my shoulder, steady and slow, just like I used to push the old cupboard when it jammed. But this wasn't jammed. It felt solid, held, as if someone was pressing from the other side. My stomach dropped for a second. I thought it was just me, my joints locking up again. Happens sometimes. My hands shake, my knees stiffen. I even laughed nervously. Getting old is just one long prank from your own body. But then I pressed my ear to the wood and heard it. Not a creak, not a squeak, a metallic clink, tiny, sharp, familiar. My husband was a carpenter once, and I'd know that sound anywhere. Nails. Someone had nailed my bedroom door shut. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. Fear wastes breath, and breath is expensive at my age. I just stood there, one hand on the door, one hand on my chest, trying to feel my own heartbeat. It was too loud. The kind of pounding that echoes in your ears until it doesn't feel like it's inside you anymore. The air felt wrong, still, heavy. The little humming sounds every house has, the fridge, the clock, the soft crack of old wood, they were gone. It was as if the whole house was listening. Then the smell changed. Stronger, thicker, smoke, real smoke this time, curling under the door like a gray whisper with teeth. I took a step back, covering my mouth. My mind raced. Window. Window. Margaret, my late husband, always told me, never panic, always move. So I did. My fingers shook as I reached for the latch. It was stuck. Of course, everything in this old house sticks. You'll test me tonight, won't you?" I muttered through a trembling laugh. I looked around for something to break it, my vanity chair, the one John gave me on our 30th anniversary. Pretty, delicate carved legs, not built for violence. I gripped it tight anyway. My arms ached even before I lifted it. "Sorry, John," I whispered and swung. The glass cracked with a painful shriek. I hit again. Crack. One more time. Smash. The window shattered into 1,000 tiny stars. Cold air rushed in like salvation, and for a second I almost cried from relief. I pushed the broken glass aside with my sleeve and coughed, the smoke biting my throat. The fire had found something new to feed on, the rug maybe, or the curtains. I could hear the low, hungry sound behind the door, like someone breathing too close to my ear. My eyes watered. "Don't you dare stop now," I told myself, half coughing, half laughing. "You didn't survive 74 winters just to end in your own damn bedroom." I climbed onto the window frame slowly, every joint screaming in protest. My left leg over, then my right. The wood pressed into my palms, cutting them a little, but pain didn't feel real anymore, just a reminder that I was still here. The drop outside wasn't far, maybe 4 feet. But at my age, even a small fall can break months of independence. I sat on the sill, muttering, "All right, 1, 2, and pushed myself off. I landed hard. My knees buckled. A sharp sting shot up my leg. I winced but managed to stand, wobbling, clutching the wall for balance. The air outside was cold and merciless. I coughed again, bent forward, trying to catch my breath. The night sky was gray, and smoke was already curling out from the roof. I turned back toward the window I'd escaped from, glowing orange like a monster's mouth, and then I froze. On the lawn, just a few steps away, stood my daughter. Diana, my only child, the one I'd raised with trembling hands and too much patience. She wasn't running toward me. She wasn't screaming. She was holding up her phone, recording. The red light blinked steady. For a moment I didn't understand. My mind refused to. I thought maybe she's filming for evidence. Maybe she called for help already. My lips parted to call her name, Diana, but my voice cracked halfway. She didn't move, didn't even blink, just watched, calm, steady, like she was waiting for a scene to end. The fire roared behind me, louder now. Sparks burst through the window frame. I could hear sirens in the distance, faint, then closer, but the world around us felt frozen. Her face didn't show fear, it showed something colder, something that twisted in my gut, annoyance. Like I had just ruined a plan, my throat tightened. I wanted to ask why, but the words wouldn't come. Maybe deep down I already knew. Maybe some part of me had known for months, the way she looked at me lately, the way she spoke about the house, about space, about money. My knees trembled, but not from the cold. I took one small step toward her. The earth felt soft under my slippers. the smoke wrapped around my shoulders like a dirty scarf. She lowered her phone a little, just enough for me to see her eyes. Still calm, still steady. That was the moment I understood I wasn't supposed to be standing here. A hollow laugh slipped out of me, shaky, almost a sob. "Ha, guess you didn't plan for that, did you?" I whispered under my breath. The sirens were louder now. Red lights flashed across the street, washing over the grass between us, but she didn't move. She just stared, frozen between guilt and fury, a daughter caught between being a savior and a criminal. And as the firefighters jumped out of their truck, shouting orders and running toward the flames, I just stood there, chest rising and falling, heart hammering in disbelief. Because no matter how much smoke filled my lungs, the real suffocation had nothing to do with fire. It was the moment I realized love doesn't always burn warm. Sometimes it burns you alive, and just before the firefighters reached me, she smiled faintly, a small, nervous twitch as if to say, "You weren't supposed to make it out." The first thing I felt was not relief, it was confusion, this strange, dizzy feeling like my soul was lagging behind my body, still back inside that bedroom staring at the locked door while my feet were already on the lawn. And for a few seconds I just stood there coughing, ha, half bent over, hands on my knees, trying to pull air into lungs that felt like they'd been scrubbed with sandpaper. And all I could see was my daughter's face in front of me, framed by smoke and flashing lights that hadn't even reached us yet. She wasn't running toward me, she wasn't screaming, she wasn't even calling my name, she was just recording, her phone held steady like she'd rehearsed this angle, like she'd been waiting for this exact shot, and that tiny red light on the screen blinked at me like a heartbeat that didn't belong to either of us. For a second I tried to give her an excuse, because that's what mothers do, right? We make excuses for our children until the excuses start to choke us. I told myself, maybe she's filming so she can show the fire department, maybe she already called them, maybe she's in shock, maybe, but then my eyes cleared just enough for me to really look at her. Her mouth was a thin line, her jaw tight, her free hand shaking, but not with fear, with irritation, like someone whose plan just got messed up by bad timing. I straightened slowly, every bone in my back complaining, and tried to smile at her through the coughing. "Deanna," I wheezed, one hand reaching out instinctively, a mother's reflex that refuses to die even when everything else is falling apart. For half a heartbeat I thought she would drop the phone and rush to me like she did when she was a little girl scared of thunderstorms, crying and crashing into my arms, but that didn't happen. Instead, she lowered the phone only a few inches, just enough to show half her face, eyes glossy but dry, and gave me this tiny, fake soft smile that hurt more than the smoke. "Mom, you're out," she said, like she just opened the wrong door in a hotel, surprised but bothered. That tone, that little annoyed twist at the end, it scraped against something deep inside me. Out. I was out, not alive, not safe, just out, like I'd stepped off a bus at the wrong stop. Before I could reply, the distant sirens finally crashed into our moment, growing louder, closer, like the world was catching up to what had already happened, and red and blue lights started bouncing off the windows, off the hedge, off my daughter's pale face. She straightened up quickly, wiped under her eyes even though there were no tears, fixed her hair in one fast motion and lifted the phone again, angling it toward the house this time, like she was switching from one shot to another in her mind. I let out a tired sigh, a little laugh mixed in. "Ha, look at me, escaping through a window at my age," I whispered, more to myself than to her, but she heard it, I could tell from the way her jaw clenched. The fire truck pulled up with a loud screech, men jumped down, boots hitting the ground in quick heavy thuds, voices overlapping. "Where's the source?" "Anyone inside? Ma'am, are you okay?" One of them rushed toward me with a blanket, wrapping it around my shoulders before I could even protest. The sudden warmth made the sting of the cold air and the heat behind me clash on my skin, and for a second I wanted to just sit down and weep from pure exhaustion, just let it all spill out, but something stubborn inside kept me upright. "I was inside," I managed to say, pointing shakily toward the broken window behind me. "The door wouldn't open, I had to break it." The firefighter blinked, clearly not expecting that from someone with white hair and shaky hands. "The door," he repeated, leaning closer. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "It was locked, not from my side, it felt like nailed," I said, and the word felt heavy in my mouth, almost ridiculous, like some crime show line, but it was the only true word I had. Before he could respond, Diana rushed over. Finally playing the concerned daughter, her voice suddenly soft and shaking. "Mom, please, you're confused," she said quickly, cutting in front of him, one hand on my arm as if she'd been there the whole time. "She's been tired lately. You know how age is, she must have panicked, the door probably just stuck." The firefighter looked between us, uncertain. I watched her fingers tighten around my sleeve, not gentle, almost as if she was squeezing a warning into my skin. I let out another breath, a small, humorless laugh that came out like a cough. "Ha, doors don't grow fresh nails when you're not looking," I murmured, just loud enough for the man to hear. His brows furrowed, her eyes flashed. They didn't argue then, they had a fire to put out. Hoses blasted water, steam hissed out of my bedroom window, the roar of flames slowly softened into an angry crackle. I stood there wrapped in that blanket, watching my house spit smoke into the sky, and all I could think was how wrong it felt that the scariest thing tonight wasn't the fire at my back, it was the calm face of my own child in front of me. A paramedic came over, checked my pulse, my oxygen, made me sit on the edge of the curb for a bit. He spoke gently, told me I was lucky, that most people trapped in a burning room don't get out in time. Lucky, ha. I smiled weakly, but inside something twisted at that word. Was this luck, or a mistake from someone else's point of view? While they worked, I caught Diana out of the corner of my eye, pacing near the hedge, phone still in her hand, whispering angrily to someone on a call. Her eyes kept darting toward the house, then to me, then back to the house, like she was trying to decide which problem was bigger now, the burned wall or the breathing mother. Every now and then our eyes met. Each time she looked away first. That told me more than any apology ever could. At one point, a fire captain walked over and introduced himself, asking the usual questions in a calm, practiced tone. Was I alone inside? Did I hear anything strange before the fire? How long had I smelled smoke? Did I see sparks? Did I turn on any heaters? Was anyone else in the house earlier? I answered as clearly as I could, no dramatics, no shaky voice, just simple facts. I was alone, my daughter had told me to rest, I had dozed off, I woke up to the smell, the door wouldn't open, it felt solid like someone had shut it from the other side, there was no fire alarm ringing. He wrote it all down, nodding slowly, looking more and more thoughtful. Before he left, he said, "We'll need to take a good look at that door once we pull it out, ma'am." I nodded, my fingers tightening on the blanket. "Yes," I replied, "you really should." As he walked away, Diana slid up beside me again, crouching down to my level, her smile tight, eyes glossy now, finally wet, but the kind of wet that comes from panic, not care. "Mom," she whispered through gritted teeth, "you have to stop saying things like that, you're confused, okay? Smoke does that to you, you don't remember right now." For a moment, I almost let her words in. I almost thought maybe she's right, maybe I'm mixing things up, I am old, maybe my mind is playing tricks, and then I remembered the sound of metal locking into wood, the feel of the handle refusing to turn. The way the window glass cut my palms when I chose it over the door my own child had always walked through. I turned my head and looked straight at her, really looked, past the fake concern, past the tremble in her voice. "I remember enough," I said softly with a small sigh, "I remember the nails." She froze, just for a heartbeat, and in that tiny pause I saw her fear, not of losing me, but of losing control of the story she wanted everyone to believe. She stood up quickly and almost snapped at one of the firefighters, asking when they could go inside, when the insurance people would arrive, when someone would explain how this accident started. Accident. The word felt bitter on my tongue. As the night went on, the fire shrank, the smoke thinned, and the house stood wounded but not gone. I sat there, wrapped in that scratchy blanket, my body exhausted, my chest aching, my mind wide awake, replaying every second from the moment the door refused to open. The more I thought about it, the more one horrible, clear thought formed in my head, like a sentence being written by an invisible hand. I was not meant to be here, on this lawn, breathing cold air under flashing red lights. I was supposed to be a quiet tragedy, a story people whispered later, poor old woman, wrong place, wrong time. And just as that realization settled like a stone in my chest, I saw two firefighters carrying something heavy out of the house, my bedroom door, blackened at the edges but the middle still solid. Even from where I sat I could see it, silver glints along the side, catching the floodlight, more than one, clean, straight, fresh. My heart gave a hard, painful thump. Oh, there it is. Proof. The captain followed behind them, eyes narrowed as he stared at the nails shining in the burned wood, and in that moment, even before he said a single word, I knew one thing for sure. Someone else was about to see what I already knew in my bones. This wasn't an accident and I wasn't crazy. And as he turned his head slowly toward my daughter, who suddenly couldn't seem to look anywhere but at her shoes, I realized the fire might be dying, but the real story was just about to start. When dawn finally arrived, it didn't feel like morning at all. The sky was gray and swollen, like even the sun didn't want to look at what had happened here. My house stood there, wounded, half black, half smoke, half miracle. The firemen had been kind, they'd wrapped me in a blanket, given me water, kept their voices soft, but kindness felt strange after a night like that. I wasn't sure what to do with it. I guess there's a certain kind of shock where you just keep smiling and nodding like your body's trying to prove you're still alive. I sat on the curb, that blanket clinging to my shoulders, watching as they carried the old bedroom door out. Even burned, it looked guilty. The edges were charred and cracked, but those shiny silver nails, 3 of them, still caught the floodlights like tiny knives. I could hear one of the firemen muttering, "Fresh metal, sir, this wasn't old." The captain knelt, ran a gloved hand along the blackened wood, and sighed through his teeth. I could tell from his face that something about this didn't sit right. "Whoever did this," he said quietly, "knew exactly what they were doing." My daughter stood just behind him, arms crossed, her face pale and wet. She'd finally found her tears, but not the kind I recognized. These weren't tears of guilt, they were strategy. She sniffled once, wiped her cheek, and turned toward the firefighters with a trembling voice that belonged on a stage. My mom gets confused sometimes, she said. You know, memory slips, smoke inhalation, she probably just panicked. Aw, I could have laughed if it didn't hurt so much. Panicked. I'd spent the night listening to my own house breathe smoke, counting seconds between my heartbeats, talking myself out of dying, and the best she could come up with was panicked. I lowered my eyes, pretending to adjust the blanket, but really to hide the small, bitter smile that crept across my lips. My daughter always did have a way of rewriting stories she didn't like. The fire captain didn't respond right away. He just stared at her, then back at me. Ma'am, he said, stepping closer, did you say the door was nailed from the outside? I nodded. Yes, you'll find 3 nails, fresh ones. He raised an eyebrow, almost impressed by how certain I sounded. And you were alone inside? I was, I said softly. He jotted something down in his little notepad, then looked toward my daughter again. Who else has keys to the property? Her lips parted, just a flicker of hesitation. I do, she said, a bit too quickly. The captain gave a polite nod, not accusing, not yet, but that tiny pause, I saw it, he saw it. Everyone saw it. Then came the smell of wet smoke, thick and sour, mixing with the faint sweetness of burnt wood. The air was heavy with it. A paramedic crouched beside me again, checking my pulse for the 3rd time. You're steady, he said, smiling kindly, but you'll need rest. I smiled back, but it probably looked more like a grimace. Rest. As if sleep could fix the sound of nails being hammered in the dark. When they finally let me stand, my legs felt like paper. I shuffled toward the front gate, careful on the uneven ground, while the firefighters moved back inside for inspection. My daughter followed close behind, whispering urgently, Mom, stop talking about the nails, please, you're going to make everything worse. Her voice cracked, a mix of fear and frustration. You're making them think. I stopped walking and turned toward her, my throat raw but my voice steady. Think what, Deanna, that someone wanted me dead? She froze, just a breath of silence between us, sharp and thin as broken glass. Then she shook her head, her tears suddenly dry. You're tired, she whispered, voice trembling in that fake soft way I'd heard too many times before. You're confused, please, I sighed, long and shaky. Confused, maybe. But not blind. Before she could respond, the captain called me over. Mrs. Hale, we need your statement. He guided me gently toward the back of the truck where a clipboard waited. I could see the burned door lying on the grass just a few steps away. Up close, it looked worse, the middle blackened, edges curled, but the nails were exactly as I remembered. New, untouched by rust. I pointed at them, my finger trembling slightly. Those weren't there yesterday, I said. That door's been hanging in this house for 30 years. If someone fixed it, I'd know. The captain nodded again, slower this time. We'll take it for evidence, he said. The angle they're hammered in, the freshness, it all matches your description. He paused, then lowered his voice so only I could hear. You did the right thing, breaking that window. Those words hit me harder than I expected. The right thing. For months, maybe years, I'd been doubting every instinct I had, letting people tell me I was forgetful, frail, overreacting. But hearing that, it made something inside me settle. Even just a little behind us, the paramedics packed up. The crowd that had gathered on the sidewalk started thinning out. Neighbors whispered, eyes flicking between me and the house, between me and my daughter. Some of them waved gently, pity waves, the kind that say, poor woman, without words. I nodded back, half smiling, letting them think whatever they wanted. Let them think I was lucky or brave or pitiful. Let them whisper. The truth would crawl its way out soon enough. My daughter came back to my side, her tone changing again, softer now but sharper underneath. Mom, listen, she said, glancing around to make sure no one was too close. Please, don't say anything more tonight. You're tired, you don't even know what you're saying. They're going to write it all down, and if you're wrong, I cut her off quietly. And if I'm right, she blinked, caught off guard. I could almost see the gears turning behind her eyes, looking for a script, a way to steer this conversation back into her control. But there was no line for this part. No excuse rehearsed for when the victim starts remembering too clearly. She took a step closer, lowering her voice. You're making a mistake, she hissed. You're going to regret this. I looked up at her, my voice almost a whisper. I already did. The fire captain returned, breaking the tension. Ma'am, we've called an investigator to come by in the morning, he said. We'll also need to secure the property tonight. You shouldn't stay here. I nodded. I won't. He gave me his card, a simple white rectangle that suddenly felt heavier than it should. You've got strength, Mrs. Hale, he added with a faint smile. Not everyone would have made it out. I almost smiled back, almost, but strength wasn't what got me out, desperation did. Survival isn't bravery. It's stubbornness that refuses to quit, even when everything tells you to give up. When the truck engines finally quieted and the last of the hoses were rolled away, I stood in the cold morning air one last time, looking at the house that used to be my safety. Smoke still drifted lazily from the roof, curling into the gray sky. I wrapped the blanket tighter and took one slow breath. The scent of burnt paint filled my lungs, but underneath it, faint, was something else, the metallic tang of truth finally beginning to show itself. My daughter climbed into her car, slamming the door harder than she meant to. I could see her through the glass, head down, lips moving, maybe talking to someone, maybe talking to herself. The engine started, headlights cutting across the street. She didn't look back. Not one saw. I let out a soft, tired laugh, shaking my head. Guess even fire can't teach some people warmth, I whispered. The fire captain waved from the yard. Get some rest, ma'am. We'll talk tomorrow, I echoed quietly, watching the smoke drift higher. Because tomorrow I knew wasn't going to be about the fire. It was going to be about the truth behind it. And as the last fire truck disappeared down the road, the cold morning wind carried a single thought through my mind: if the fire didn't kill me, the truth just might. By the next morning, the smoke smell had crawled into everything I owned. It clung to my hair, my coat, my throat, my thoughts. Even the cheap motel room I'd checked into felt heavy with it. The wallpaper peeled a little near the ceiling, and the heater rattled like an old man's cough. Ha ha ha, fitting company for me, I suppose. I sat on the edge of the bed, blanket around my shoulders, just staring at my hands. They were still trembling from time to time, not from fear, but from remembering that feeling, the door handle refusing to turn, the silence pressing from the other side. Every time I blinked, I saw those silver nails shining in the smoke. I didn't cry. Not yet. My tears had learned to wait until there was privacy. Old habit. I rubbed the cuts on my palms gently, watching how the skin had already started to swell. "Oh," I whispered, half laughing, half sighing. I look like I wrestled the devil and lost by 1 point. The joke didn't land even with myself. The mirror across the room caught my reflection, small, hunched, wrapped in gray like a ghost someone forgot to bury. "Ha," I told it, "don't look at me like that, I'm still here." Then came the knock, light at first, then harder, 3 sharp taps. My chest tightened. No one from the fire department was supposed to come until later. The sound hit again. "Knock, knock, knock. Mom, it's me, Diana." For a second, I just stared at the door, my whole body stiff. Every part of me wanted to stay still, pretend to be asleep, pretend not to exist. But habit is a cruel thing. Mothers open doors even when they shouldn't. I shuffled forward, unlocked it halfway, and peeked through the gap. There she stood, her hair a mess, eyes swollen, face painted with what she thought sadness looked like. "Mom," she said softly, voice trembling, "can I come in?" I didn't open the door wider. "You found me quick," I said. My tone was calm, too calm maybe. She gave a little laugh, forced, like the sound of someone rehearsing emotions. "Of course I was worried. You didn't answer my calls." "Ha," I chuckled quietly. "I didn't answer the door last night either, and that didn't stop anyone from nailing it shut." Her smile froze, just a flicker, but I saw it. "Mom, please," she said, lowering her voice, "this is all just a misunderstanding. You're letting your imagination run wild. The investigators are asking questions that don't make sense, and you're only making things harder by saying strange things." "Strange," I repeated softly. "You mean true?" She stepped closer to the doorway, pushing gently against it, but I held firm. "Mom, listen," she said, her tone snapping just a little. "I'm trying to help you. If you keep talking like this, they'll think you're confused. They'll say you panicked, that you made things up." I let out a dry little laugh. "Oh, I wish I had. Ha, you think I wanted to smash my own window and jump out like a thief? My legs still ache from that fall." "Stop it," she said sharply, then caught herself, softening her tone again. "Please stop saying these things. You're tired, you need rest. Just tell them you don't remember. Say you thought the door was stuck, okay? Then the insurance will go through and we can rebuild." Insurance. There it was. Not a word about safety, not relief that I was alive, just paperwork and money. "It always circles back to money, doesn't it?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "You've been busy," I said quietly. "First the fire, now the claim." Her lips twitched. "What are you implying?" "Nothing," I sighed, "just noticing." She ran her hands through her hair, frustration cracking through the performance. "You're being impossible, Mom. Everyone's confused. You're confused. Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. "Remembering." She glared at me for a moment, jaw tight. "You're going to regret this," she muttered, then her tone broke again into that pleading whine. "Please just tell them you panicked. That's all you have to do. You'll look reasonable. I'll handle everything else." "Ha ha ha," I laughed softly, tired but genuine this time. "You'll handle everything else? Oh, Diana, you've been handling things for a long time, haven't you? My bills, my keys, my appointments, even my exits, it seems." "Mom, that's not fair," she said, voice cracking. "No," I said, "but it's true." She looked down, biting her lip, then glanced toward the bed, the small lamp, the folded blanket, all my tiny signs of survival. "You shouldn't be alone," she said suddenly, her tone switching again to concern. "You're too fragile right now. You could come stay with me just until—" "Until what?" I interrupted softly. "Until I stopped talking." Her eyes darted up to mine, wide, caught off guard. The silence that followed was heavy. I could hear the heater clicking in the corner, struggling to keep up. I took a slow breath, steady and deliberate. "Deanna," I said finally, my voice quiet but sharp, "why didn't you call my name last night?" Her mouth opened. Nothing came out, just silence. You saw me at the window, I continued. You saw the smoke, you saw me coughing, breaking glass, climbing out. You could have shouted, you could have helped, but you didn't. My throat tightened, the words tasted like ash. You filmed me instead, she blinked quickly, pretending to look hurt. Mom, that's not true, I didn't know what to do. I froze, then why did you look annoyed? She stepped back, shaking her head. You're imagining things, she said again, louder this time, as if volume could erase evidence, I sighed. Ha, I used to imagine you as a kind woman too. We're both wrong tonight. She stared at me for a long time, her breathing uneven. Then she turned abruptly toward the door, wiping at her eyes. Fine, if you want to believe your own stories, go ahead. But don't expect me to fix this later. I wouldn't dare, I said. She hesitated at the doorway, half-turned like she wanted to throw one more accusation, but found none that would stick. You're going to ruin everything, she whispered. I met her gaze, tired but unflinching. Sweetheart, I said quietly, everything was already ruined when you locked me in. Her mouth twitched, a crack, small but deep. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She just stood there, breathing hard, eyes shiny with unshed rage. Finally, she whispered, I'll talk to the investigators myself. Maybe they'll listen. Maybe, I said. But nails don't lie, Diana, neither does smoke. She stared a moment longer, then stormed out, the door slamming behind her so hard the mirror rattled. I stood there for a while, one hand on the doorframe, my heart thudding softly against my ribs. The silence afterward felt like a confession, hers, not mine. I walked back to the bed, lowering myself slowly. The room seemed colder now, emptier. The air hummed faintly from the heater. I looked at my hands again, the small cuts still raw, and laughed quietly. Ha, old bones, but not broken yet. Outside, I could hear her car start, engine roaring like anger on wheels. It faded down the road, leaving only the hum of the motel and the far-off siren of another fire truck somewhere else. I lay back, staring at the cracked ceiling, my mind spinning slow but sharp. There was no going back now. The fire had burned more than wood, it had burned away pretense, pity, patience. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a victim of my age. I felt awake, and as I closed my eyes, a thought whispered through the smoke-stained corners of my mind: the fire wasn't the end. It was the beginning of truth finally catching fire. The morning after her visit, I woke up to the sound of the motel heater groaning like it hated its job. For a moment, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, half expecting to see smoke curling through it again. My body was sore, every joint, every muscle. Even my thoughts felt bruised. I laughed quietly to myself. Ha, this is what surviving feels like. Someone should have warned me. My throat was dry, my tongue tasted like ash and cheap coffee, and the air in the room still carried that faint burnt smell that refused to leave me alone. I sat up slowly, my knees cracking in protest. Old bones, always reminding me they exist. The little digital clock on the nightstand blinked 8:32 a.m. I rubbed my eyes and whispered, time to stop shaking, Margaret. There's work to do. I had promised myself in the mirror last night that fear wasn't going to be my roommate anymore. If Diana wanted to turn this story into confusion and pity, then I needed to find proof that my memory wasn't as fragile as she wished it was. And I knew exactly where to start: the bank. My second home for 40 years, I got dressed slowly, choosing the same long gray coat I'd worn the day before. It smelled faintly of smoke, but then again, so did everything I own now. Outside, the air was crisp, biting my cheeks awake. The cab driver didn't talk much, just played a sad Hindi song on the radio, humming softly under his breath. I didn't mind. Silence has its own music once you stop being afraid of it. When I reached the bank, the marble steps looked the same as always, neat and cold, like they'd never known chaos. The security guard recognized me immediately. "Good morning, Mrs. Hale," he said, offering a polite nod. "Safe deposit today?" I nodded. "Yes, dear, it's time I visited my memory box." He smiled without understanding the weight of that sentence, and that was fine. The air inside the vault was colder, stiller, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones but steadies your heartbeat. The manager, Mr. Jennings, brought the small steel box to one of the tables and left me alone with it. The click of the lock opening sounded louder than it should have. Inside was my entire paper life: neat stacks of envelopes, official forms, yellowed receipts, the deed to the house, insurance documents, letters from John back when people still wrote real letters, and one small photograph of him standing proudly in front of our repair shop. "Ha, you'd laugh if you saw me now, John," I whispered softly. Still keeping every scrap of paper like it's a weapon. But in a way, it was, because every page in that box was proof that I wasn't some confused old woman. I was a woman who remembered everything worth remembering. I pulled out the newest folder, my homeowner's insurance policy, updated just last spring. I'd signed it myself, and I remembered the conversation with the agent clearly. "You're fully covered, Mrs. Hale," he'd said. "Just keep these documents safe." Safe, he'd said. Safe. I smiled at the irony. Safe in a vault, not in my house. Then I opened another envelope, the sale agreement from when I sold the repair shop John and I built together. My name was on every page, every signature bold and clear. The money from that sale had been carefully split, some in savings, some in investments, some in this very bank. Diana always thought the money was long gone. She never asked, she just assumed. I had let her, maybe because it was easier to stay quiet than to invite another argument. But quietness has a cost, doesn't it? I ran my finger over the paper, tracing the old ink lines. You thought I forgot, didn't you, my dear girl? I murmured. You thought I lost track, that I'd just hand over everything like I hand over my keys. My lips tightened into something halfway between a smile and a sigh. Well, I may be old, but I'm not finished. There was another file too, one that Diana didn't even know existed. It contained every letter and receipt from the fire safety upgrades I'd done last year, new wiring, new breakers, even the fire alarm system she claimed had just stopped working. It hadn't. It was disconnected. I'd noticed weeks ago that it didn't beep when I changed the battery, but I'd been too tired to ask why. Now I knew. I closed the box slowly, the metal lid clicking shut with a satisfying finality. That sound, that neat, clean click, it felt like control coming back to me in small pieces. My hands trembled less now. Just as I was about to leave, Mr. Jennings appeared again, holding his clipboard. Everything in order, ma'am? He asked kindly. I looked up at him, my voice soft but certain. Perfectly. These papers remember things better than most people. He smiled politely, but there was concern in his eyes. The fire investigator called, he said hesitantly. He mentioned you might need access to some records soon. If there's anything you need, I'll personally arrange it. I paused, then nodded slowly. Thank you, and Mr. Jennings? He looked up. I'm sorry about your daughter, he said gently, clearly meaning it as sympathy, not accusation. A long, quiet breath left my chest. Everyone is, I replied, my voice barely a whisper. Everyone except her. He didn't know what to say, so he just gave a small, respectful nod and walked away. I packed the documents carefully into my bag, each folder slid in like a piece of armor. My steps back to the cab were slower, heavier, but for the first time in a long while they felt deliberate. In the car, I held my purse on my lap, one hand gripping the edge of it as if the papers inside could steady me. The city outside rolled by, people rushing to work, vendors shouting, life pretending nothing had changed. It's funny how the world keeps breathing even when yours has been set on fire. When the cab stopped at a red light, I caught my reflection in the window, tired, wrinkled, but awake in a way I hadn't been for years. I whispered to it, you were never crazy, you just trusted the wrong hands. I smiled faintly. It almost felt good to hear myself sound strong again. The documents in my bag were more than paper now, they were my proof, my voice, my shield. For years I had let Diana narrate my story, what I could remember, what I couldn't, what I should sign, what I shouldn't question. But now, every piece of ink and paper whispered the same thing back to me. You're not done yet. As the cab turned down the main road, I leaned back, letting the morning light touch my face. The world outside looked cleaner somehow, sharper. Maybe truth does that, it burns everything false away until even daylight feels like honesty, and somewhere between one red light and the next, I caught myself whispering with a little laugh, my daughter may have fire, but I have records. Because sometimes the safest place isn't behind locked doors, it's inside the proof you kept when everyone thought you weren't paying attention. By the time I reached my lawyer's office, the morning sun had already turned harsh and white, the kind that doesn't warm you, just exposes everything it touches. My knees ached from the climb up the stairs, but the pain was useful. It reminded me I was still moving. I pushed open the old wooden door, the bell above it giving that familiar soft ding. Good morning, Mrs. Hale, the secretary said, standing politely. I nodded with a small smile. Andrew expecting me? Yes, ma'am. He said to send you right in. I walked into his office and found him just as I remembered, glasses hanging low on his nose, suit a little rumpled, that calm steady presence that always felt like a pause in a noisy world. He stood when he saw me. Margaret, he said softly, genuine concern in his tone, I heard about the fire. Are you all right? I gave a small laugh, as all right as anyone can be after crawling out of their own window at 74. He shook his head slowly, not smiling. Sit, he said, motioning to the chair. I did, resting my purse on my lap like it was part of me now. He waited a moment before asking, tell me what happened. So I did. Not with drama or tears, just plain and steady, the way truth likes to be told. I told him about the smell, the nails, the smoke sliding under the door, the glass breaking, my daughter standing there with her phone raised like it was a shield. I told him about her visit to the motel, her trembling voice, her talk of confusion and insurance. I didn't skip a single detail. My voice stayed calm, but my hands kept twisting the edge of my scarf. When I finished, the silence in the room was thick enough to touch. Andrew leaned back slowly, his chair creaking. Your daughter tried to kill you, he said at last. No hesitation, no softening, just the raw truth laid bare. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Not because I didn't know it, I did, but because hearing it out loud made it real in a way that thinking never could. I stared at the floor, letting the words settle between us like dust. Yes, I said finally, my voice small but cert. I think she did, he nodded once, calm as always. Then we handle it properly. The fire department already has evidence, correct? Yes, I said, they found the nails. He scribbled something on his notepad. And you have your insurance papers, your property deeds, your will? I lifted my purse and tapped it lightly. All here, every last piece. He gave a short, approving smile. Good. You've done half my job already. He flipped through a few files on his desk, pulled out one form, then another. We're going to do two things today, he said, his tone shifting from empathy to strategy. First, I'll help you file an official statement, not with emotion but with fact. Second, we'll update your legal protections, power of attorney, will, and financial guardianship. We make sure no one, especially your daughter, has access to anything without your consent. For the first time in days, I felt something like relief slide through me. Not the warm kind, but the steady kind, like when a doctor finally names what's been hurting you. Let's do it, I said. He studied me for a moment, maybe expecting hesitation. When he didn't see any, he smiled faintly. All right then. He began writing, slow and precise. I watched his pen move, the ink flowing like quiet justice. The scratching sound was oddly soothing. Margaret, he said after a moment, I've known you a long time. You've always been careful, kept records, checked everything twice. That's what's going to save you now. Your daughter might try to twist this into confusion or senility, but the facts will hold. Ha, I chuckled softly. I told her once, nails don't lie. I suppose papers don't either. He gave a small grin. Exactly. We spent the next hour sorting through documents, the sale contract of my shop, the deed, the updated insurance policy. He examined each one like a surgeon handling something fragile. You've kept these in perfect condition, he said. John always told me. I smiled faintly. If it has your name on it, it's your armor. He nodded. Smart man. After a while, he leaned back again, folding his hands. I have to ask, Margaret, are you ready for what comes next? Legal action means confrontation. It won't be quiet. I looked him straight in the eye. Andrew, I said, my voice steady, quiet is what got me here. He nodded once, slowly. Then we proceed. He started explaining the next steps, the investigator's interview, the court statement, how we'd submit evidence. I listened carefully, every word like a nail hammered into place, this time on my side. There was a strange comfort in the routine of it all. Facts, paper, process. No emotions, no begging, no pretending, just truth written down properly. When he finished drafting the first set of forms, he slid them toward me. These give you full legal control over your assets and decisions. No one can claim confusion on your behalf again. I picked up the pen. My hand trembled, but not from fear, from the weight of it all. Ha, I whispered, my hands haven't shaken this much since my wedding. He smiled gently. Then maybe this is your second one, a marriage to yourself. That made me laugh, really laugh this time. A tired, broken laugh, but real. I'll sign that, I said, and I did slowly, carefully, letter by letter. When it was done, he took the papers and tapped them neatly into a pile. There, he said softly, now she can't touch you. Not your property, not your name, not your future. I stared at the papers for a long moment. It's strange, I murmured, how easy it is to sign away someone's power over you when you've been giving it freely for years. He didn't say anything, just nodded like someone who understood more than he'd ever admit. When I stood to leave, the room felt brighter somehow, even though nothing had changed outside. Maybe the sun had finally found its way in through the dusty blinds. Maybe it was just me standing taller at the door. Andrew stopped me. Margaret, he said, his tone low, serious, this will get ugly. She'll come to you again. She'll cry, plead, manipulate. Don't open the door, not even a little. I smiled faintly. Ha, don't worry, I learned that lesson the hard way. He gave a slow nod. Good, I'll call you tomorrow once I file everything. Keep your phone on. I will, I said. As I stepped outside, the city noise hit me, horns, footsteps, voices, all too loud after the stillness of his office. But underneath it all, I felt something I hadn't in a long, long time. Control, thin, shaky, but mine. I stopped at the sidewalk, the wind brushing against my face, the same wind that had carried smoke through my window 2 nights ago. I closed my eyes for a second and breathed deeply. It still hurt, but at least this breath wasn't stolen. I opened my eyes again and whispered to no one in particular, you almost buried me, Diana, but I've got shovels too. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive with sirens, sometimes it walks in quietly, wearing reading glasses and carrying a pen sharper than any knife. The next few days passed in that strange half-silence that comes after something awful, the kind that hums beneath every little sound. The world looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Even the morning light through the motel window seemed hesitant, like it wasn't sure it was welcome here anymore. I'd wake up, sit on the edge of the bed, and stare at the phone, waiting for calls that didn't come from investigators, from the insurance people, from anyone really. And in between those waiting hours, I'd talk to myself in the mirror. Ha, I'd say, half smiling, look at you, Margaret, still talking to yourself because at least you know you'll listen. But that morning, the one that mattered, there was another knock at my door. Not sharp and impatient like Diana's. This one was soft, a pause between each tap hesitant. I frowned, standing slowly. "Who is it?" I called. "It's Emily," came the voice. My heart tripped over itself. My granddaughter, Diana's daughter. I hadn't seen her in months, maybe a year. She was busy, always busy, college, work, life. I unlocked the door slowly, my chest tight, not knowing what to expect. And there she was, hair messy, eyes red, her coat zipped up too fast like she'd left in a hurry. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, my voice cracking before I even realized it. "What are you doing here?" She stepped forward quickly, wrapping her arms around me before I could move. It startled me, the warmth of it, the suddenness. "Ah," I murmured, holding her tightly. "Easy, darling, these old ribs aren't built for surprise hugs." She laughed shakily through tears. "I'm sorry, Grandma," she said. I needed to see you." We sat down on the bed. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. She kept wringing her hands, her knee bouncing nervously. I watched her carefully. Her eyes looked haunted, not like mine after the fire, but close enough that I recognized it. "Emily," I said softly, "what's going on?" She hesitated, swallowed hard, then blurted it out all at once, her voice trembling. "Mom's been lying, Grandma, about everything." The room seemed to shrink. I blinked slowly. "What do you mean?" She reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and scrolled through it quickly, hands shaking. "I didn't mean to find them," she said, "but she left her iPad open last night. There were messages, texts between her and some guy named Carl. He's the one who bought the new insurance policy for the house. The one she said you wanted." I felt my stomach turn to ice. "Carl," I repeated, "that's her insurance agent." Emily nodded quickly. "Yes, Grandma, she planned it. She wrote things like she sleeps early, and once it's done I'll call you in the morning." There were photos too. She sent him pictures of the house, of your bedroom door. Her voice broke. "Grandma, she knew you were inside." I didn't move. Didn't speak. The words hung there like smoke, choking me all over again. My mind tried to reject it, to protect itself, but I could see the messages reflected in Emily's eyes, the kind of truth that can't be undone once spoken. "Ha," I breathed out softly, half a laugh, half a sob. "She always said she was good at planning. I just didn't know she meant this." Emily started crying then, quietly at first, then harder, like she'd been holding it in for too long. I reached over, brushing her hair back with trembling fingers. "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered, "you did nothing wrong, you hear me? Nothing. Sometimes children are just echoes of what they're taught. But you broke the echo." She shook her head, tears falling. "I can't believe she'd do this to you, Grandma." I tried to confront her, but she screamed at me, said I was ungrateful, said I didn't understand. I sighed, the sound long and heavy. "That's what guilt sounds like when it's cornered, love. It screams so loud you almost feel sorry for it." She looked up, her face wet but determined. "I want to help you," she said firmly. "I have screenshots." I backed everything up before she noticed. "I can give them to the police." For the first time in days, I smiled, not a weak smile, not a tired one, a proud one. "You're braver than most adults I know," I said softly, squeezing her hand. "You saved me twice now." "Twice?" she asked. "Yes," I said, chuckling faintly. "Once from the fire and once from doubt." We sat there in silence for a while, holding hands, 2 generations of women bound by something stronger than blood, truth. The heater hummed quietly in the background, and outside I could hear cars passing, the normal world carrying on. But in that small room something shifted. The fear that had wrapped itself around my chest for days finally loosened. After a while, Emily sniffled and said, "Grandma, what are you going to do?" I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "Oh, I'll let the truth do its work," I said quietly. "It always does. I've already spoken to a lawyer. He's putting everything in motion. And now, with what you've brought me," I smiled faintly. "The fire may have burned my house, but it handed me a witness." She nodded, wiping her face. "I'll go with you, Grandma, to the station, to the court, wherever you need." I reached out, cupping her cheek gently. "Aw, my sweet girl. You remind me that kindness skips a generation sometimes, just to come back stronger." She laughed softly through her tears. "Mom always said you were dramatic." I chuckled too. She's not wrong. Drama's just honesty with a louder voice. For the first time in a long while, the laugh didn't feel hollow. It echoed through the little room, light and alive. I could almost feel John smiling somewhere, proud of the women sitting here now. After she left that afternoon, I sat alone again, but the silence was different. It wasn't heavy anymore, it was calm, like the air after a storm, wet, messy, but fresh. I took out one of John's old photographs from my bag, looked at his face, and whispered. She thought she buried me in ash, love, but all she did was plant me deeper. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the fight wasn't over. If anything, it had just changed shape. This wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about reclaiming, because sometimes the only person who can hand you the truth is the one your enemy taught to lie. That evening, the motel room felt too small for my thoughts. The air hung thick and still, like it was listening. I sat by the window, hands around a cup of tea gone cold, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. People passed by, laughing, calling out, living ordinary lives, unaware that just a few doors away, an old woman was sitting with the weight of betrayal in her lap. Ha, if they only knew. I hadn't told Emily everything yet, not about the new documents Andrew filed, not about the call I'd received that morning. The investigator had found something in the remains of the house, a small can of accelerant tucked near the utility shelf. It wasn't enough for a conviction, not yet, but it was enough to make them look closer. "We'll need to question your daughter again, ma'am," the officer had said politely over the phone. I just nodded to myself, whispering, "Please do." And now here I was, waiting for night to end. I thought about John again, about all the evenings we'd shared in silence, comfortable silence, not this kind that gnawed at your ribs. I wondered what he'd say if he saw me now, probably something simple like, "Don't let her see you afraid." So when the knock came, I didn't flinch. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't hesitant. It was a sharp, desperate thud that rattled the wood. 3 knocks, then 2 more, faster, like a heartbeat gone wrong. I knew that rhythm. "Mom, open up, Deanna." I closed my eyes for a second and breathed. "Of course," I whispered to no one, "of course it's you." I stood up slowly, bones creaking, heart steady. I didn't open the door right away. Instead, I called out softly, "It's late, Diana." Her voice came through, frantic but laced with that same control she always tried to wear. "They're saying it wasn't an accident. The police called me. They said there's an investigation. Mom, you have to fix this." "Ha," I muttered under my breath. There it is again. "Not help me, not I'm sorry, but fix this." I moved closer to the door but didn't unlock it. "What is there to fix, Diana?" I asked, my tone calm. "They're just looking for the truth." She hit the door once, not violently, but with that little jolt of frustration that always came when she couldn't control me. "Mom, stop it. They think her voice cracked. "They think I tried to kill you. You can't let them believe that." I laughed softly, the sound dry as paper. "Believe, Deanna, they found nails in my door and gasoline by my wall." "What should I tell them, that the house attacked me out of boredom?" "Mom, please," she shouted, and I could hear the tears in her throat now. Real ones, I couldn't tell. Maybe she was crying for herself, not for me. "You're my mother." "You know I'd never, wouldn't you?" I interrupted quietly. The silence that followed was brutal. You could hear the truth inside it, scratching to be acknowledged. Her voice came back softer, shaky. "I made mistakes, okay, I got desperate. But you don't understand, everything's falling apart. The business, the debts. I thought if we what?" I said, leaning closer to the door. "If we burned my life down for cash," she sobbed once, a raw sound that might have been regret or rage. "You're twisting everything. I just wanted a way out. And you chose mine," I whispered. I could hear her breathing on the other side, short and fast, the sound of someone who knows they've run out of excuses. I almost felt sorry for her. "Almost? You should go home," I said softly. "The police will call you soon. It's better if you rest." "You told them, didn't you?" she said suddenly, her tone flipping again from broken to bitter in one breath. "You turned them against me," I smiled faintly. "No, Diana, you did that yourself. I just stopped covering for you." For a long moment there was nothing but silence. I could imagine her standing there, hands shaking, teeth clenched, trying to find the version of me she could still manipulate. But that version of me had burned down with the house finally. She spoke again, low and furious. "You'll regret this. You'll be alone. No one will believe you once I tell them how unstable you've been. You've been confused for months." "Ha," I chuckled softly. "Then it's a good thing the fire department believes in evidence more than gossip." The doorknob rattled once, twice, then stopped. I waited, listening. The sound of her breathing faded down the hallway, her footsteps retreating in quick, uneven bursts. Then a car door slammed outside. The engine roared to life, tires squealing against gravel, and just like that, she was gone. I leaned my forehead against the door and exhaled slowly. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the final snapping of a rope that had tied me to her for too long. "Oh," I whispered, "so this is what freedom sounds like, loud, messy, and driving away angry." I walked back to the window, pulled the curtain aside, and watched her car disappear into the night. The streetlights flickered on her windshield for a second before swallowing her whole. I sipped what was left of my tea, cold and bitter, and laughed softly. "Well, John," I murmured. She finally knocked on the right door and it stayed closed. The silence after that felt good. Clean. For the first time since the fire, I wasn't holding my breath. The air wasn't filled with fear or smoke, just peace. Fragile, temporary maybe, but real. I sat down again, writing a small note on a piece of motel stationery for Andrew. She came tonight. Angry, desperate, the mask is cracking, I'll hold firm. I folded it neatly, slipped it into my purse with the rest of the papers. My hands were still trembling slightly, but I smiled. Trembling doesn't mean weak. It means alive outside. A gust of wind blew down the street, carrying the faint smell of rain, not fire, not ash, rain. I leaned back in my chair, whispering to myself, the storm's almost over. Because sometimes revenge doesn't come with shouting or fire, it comes quietly with a locked door, a steady voice, and the courage to let the monster outside scream alone. Morning came with a strange kind of stillness, not peaceful, not quiet, just expectant. Like the world itself was holding its breath before something big. I sat by the window again, watching pale sunlight creep up the cracked motel wall, and for the first time in weeks I didn't feel afraid of the day ahead. How funny, isn't it, how you can survive fire, betrayal, and lies, and still wake up to brush your teeth like nothing ever happened. My phone buzzed just as I took my first sip of tea. Mrs. Hale, the voice on the other end was steady, official, the investigator. We've concluded our preliminary findings. We'll be filing formal charges against your daughter, arson, attempted homicide, and insurance fraud. We'd like you to come in today for a recorded statement. For a second, I just sat there in silence, tea cooling in my hands. It was happening. The words didn't feel real yet, but they were. I could almost hear John's voice in my head, quiet and proud. You held your ground, Maggie. Ah, if only he could see this. I'll be there, I said softly, and hung up by noon. I was sitting in that sterile little interview room, the kind that smells faintly of coffee and paperwork. Andrew was beside me, calm as always, tapping his pen lightly against the table. Across from us sat two detectives, one older, one young, both with that polite kind of seriousness people wear when they already know the truth but need you to say it anyway. They asked me everything. The night of the fire, the sound of the nails, the smell of the smoke, the way the door refused to open. They asked about Diana, her behavior, her financial situation, her visits, her voice on the night she came back. I answered each question slowly, carefully, no trembling, no confusion, just truth, plain and steady. At one point, the younger detective looked up from his notes. When did you realize, Mrs. Hale, he asked quietly, that this wasn't an accident? I smiled faintly. The moment I saw her filming, I said. When you've raised someone from their first breath, you know the difference between fear and performance. He nodded slowly, jotting something down. And why do you think she did it? I sighed, the sound soft but heavy. Because greed doesn't start big, I said. It starts small, one little excuse at a time, one lie that feels justified. One bill too high, one dream too expensive. Then one day it decides to call itself necessity and people start setting matches to what they love. The room went quiet for a moment. Even Andrew paused, his pen still. Then he gave me a small nod, like he was proud but didn't want to say it out loud. They showed me evidence next, photos from the scene. My old bedroom door, blackened but still solid, those silver nails gleaming through the soot. The gas can half melted, and then the phone footage. My heart clenched as the video played, the flames, the smoke, the window shattering, and then me, climbing out, coughing, shaking. The camera wobbled, zoomed in slightly, and there it was, Diana's face in the reflection of the window glass, calm, waiting. The detective paused the video and looked at me. Is this your daughter? I nodded once. Yes, that's her. Always needing to capture the moment. Andrew leaned forward. That footage alone is enough to establish intent, he said quietly. She stood there and recorded instead of calling for help. That's not panic. That's premeditation. I felt something twist in my chest, not satisfaction, not triumph, just sorrow. The kind that sits deep and doesn't cry anymore. Ha, I said softly. You know, I always thought the saddest part of motherhood was watching your child grow up and move away. Turns out it's watching her become a stranger instead. After hours of questions, signatures, and quiet nods, they let me go. Outside, the sun was already dipping low, casting long golden streaks across the parking lot. Andrew walked beside me, hands in his pockets. You did well, he said simply. I gave a tired laugh. I've been rehearsing honesty my whole life, guess it finally paid off. He smiled faintly, then grew serious again. They'll arrest her tonight, Margaret. You won't have to see her unless you choose to testify. I stopped walking. She'll see me in court? Yes, he said, but you'll be safe. Protected, I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had once held her as a baby, fed her, bandaged her knees, brushed her hair before school. Safe, I repeated softly. I suppose that's something. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the motel window again, the same chair, the same cold cup of tea. The street outside was empty except for the hum of streetlights. I wondered where she was now, in a cell, in shock, still blaming me. Maybe all three. The phone buzzed again around midnight. It was Emily. Her voice was small, trembling. They arrested her, Grandma, she whispered. She tried to say you set her up. But they found everything, the messages, the insurance papers, the gas receipts. It's over. I didn't say anything for a while, then I whispered, go to sleep, sweetheart. You did more than enough. Sorry, Grandma, she said softly. No, love, I said. You're the only one who isn't. When the call ended, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. For the first time in what felt like a century, the silence didn't scare me. The air was clean, still carrying a faint trace of smoke, but this time it wasn't haunting. It was a reminder. A scar in the air, I whispered into that quiet. She burned the house, but not the woman who built it. And I meant it. Outside, the first drops of rain started to fall, tapping against the window like soft applause. I smiled faintly. You hear that, John? Even the sky's washing her away. Because when the truth finally walks into the room, lies don't scream, they suffocate. And sometimes, the loudest justice is just the sound of a gavel echoing through silence. When I finally stepped back into what used to be my home, the air didn't smell of smoke anymore. It smelled of paint and new wood, fresh beginnings trying to cover the scars of something unforgivable. The contractors had done their work well. Smooth new walls, repaired windows, a front door that didn't groan or stick, but it wasn't the same house. It wasn't supposed to be. Ha, you can rebuild walls, but not innocence. I walked slowly through each room, my cane tapping softly against the polished floor. The sunlight poured in through the clean glass like it had been waiting for permission all this time. The fireplace was gone, they said it was too damaged to keep. I didn't mind. The place that once held flames didn't deserve any more of them. When I reached my bedroom, I froze at the doorway. For a second, my breath hitched, my body remembering things my mind didn't want it to. The smell, the heat, the pounding on the locked door. But then I saw it, a brand new door. Light oak, strong hinges, no nails. The handle turned easily beneath my fingers. It opened with a soft click, no resistance, no sound of protest. Good, I whispered. Stay that way. The room was bright now, cream-colored curtains, pale blue walls, clean sheets. I ran my fingers along the edge of the window frame, the one I'd climbed through to survive. The wood was smooth, freshly painted, but my skin still remembered the sting of the glass. I laughed quietly, shaking my head. Ha, you tried to bury me, and now look, I've got a better view. Outside, the garden was starting to bloom again. The fire had scorched everything once, but life, stubborn as ever, had found its way back. Tiny green shoots peeked out from the blackened soil, nature's little rebellion. I opened the window wide, letting the wind roll through the room. It carried the scent of rain, of earth, of something new. For a moment, I closed my eyes and just listened. No fire alarms, no sirens, no pounding fists, just birds, wind, and my own heartbeat. Oh, what a sound to miss for 74 years. The court case had ended 2 weeks ago. Diana had pleaded guilty after the evidence came crashing down around her, the texts, the accelerant, the footage she'd never meant anyone else to see. The judge's gavel had echoed once, sharp and final. I'd sat there, hands folded, no tears left to cry. She'd looked at me as they led her away, her eyes wide, hollow, angry. I didn't hate her, not even then. You can't hate someone you already lost years ago. When people ask how it feels, I tell them the truth. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like breathing again after nearly forgetting how. Justice isn't sweet, it's quiet. It arrives without applause, sits beside you and whispers, "You can rest now." Emily visits often. She brings flowers, sometimes groceries, sometimes just silence and her gentle company. Last week she laughed and said, "Grandma, you talk to the house like it's a person." I smiled. "It almost killed me," I said. "The least it can do now is listen." She rolled her eyes, but I caught the softness in her grin. Every evening, I light a small candle by the window, not to mourn, not to remember the fire, but to honor the light that followed it. I call it my peace flame. It flickers quietly as the sun sets, painting gold on the walls that used to burn red sometimes. Neighbors stop by to ask if I'll ever sell the place, move somewhere smaller, safer. I always smile and say, "This house already tried to get rid of me once. I'm not giving it the satisfaction." They laugh, but I mean it. This is my space, my story. My proof that endings don't belong to those who set the fire, they belong to those who survive it. At night, when everything goes still, I sit by that same window and talk to John. "You'd be proud, you know," I whisper. "Your Maggie finally learned how to stop fixing broken people." The wind sometimes answers, a little gust brushing my cheek like a nod. "Aw, don't get sentimental now," I tell it with a chuckle. "You'd say I'm just being dramatic again. The thing about surviving is it doesn't make you fearless, it makes you careful. I still jump at sudden noises, I still double-check locks before bed, but fear doesn't own me anymore. I carry it gently like an old photograph, a reminder, not a curse. One afternoon, while sorting through old boxes, I found the charred edge of my old photo frame. The picture inside was gone, burned to nothing, but the glass was still intact. I traced its outline with my finger and smiled softly. "Ha," I whispered, "even glass can survive what love can't." I placed it on my nightstand beside the candle, an empty frame for a full life. That felt right. As twilight fell, I stepped out onto the porch. The sky was deep purple, clouds glowing faintly in the last stretch of light. I took a deep breath, clean air, not laced with fear. The world smelled new again. A car drove past, kids laughing in the backseat. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Normal sounds, ordinary sounds, the kind of sounds I used to take for granted. I smiled, leaning against the railing. "You tried to turn my home into a coffin," I murmured to the wind, "but all you did was build me a fortress." The candle inside flickered through the window, small but steady. That's how I wanted to be remembered, not as the woman who burned, but the one who kept the flame alive. And before going back inside, I looked up at the sky, whispered one last thought into the quiet. Survival isn't about escaping the fire. It's about learning how to live in the light afterward. Then I closed the door gently, not locking it, just closing it, and for the first time since that terrible night, the sound didn't make me flinch, because sometimes the real victory isn't rebuilding what was lost, it's walking through the same door that once tried to kill you, smiling and leaving it wide open. If this story touched you, even a little, leave a comment, my dear. And remember, you deserve peace, love, and respect. Take care of your heart. I'll see you in the next story.